Welcome to Between Two Pastries, a not-so-typical nutrition podcast. Nicole and Annie are licensed and registered dietitians. Join them as they discuss hot nutrition topics, challenge popular beliefs, and have a blast doing it. Here are your hosts, Nicole and Annie.
Welcome to Between Two Pastries. This is Nicole.
Hey everyone, it's Annie.
Today we are doing part 2 of the Body Image Podcast.
Yay.
I know. Well, the first one was just so much fun.
Yeah. I enjoyed that a lot.
Yeah, I did too. I hope you all did as we drag you back. So I guess I kind of want to open it up with that as well as, from the last pod, we're recording this a little earlier than when these pods will actually air. But did any of you have like afterthoughts or things that you noticed either outside of you, like in others or within yourself, or, any interesting conversation you may have had with somebody else, just because of what we were talking about, or I don't know, just kind of opening it up.
Yeah. Who wants to start? I can call on you too.
I can
Brian,
start.
Casey?
Okay,
go ahead, Casey.
Brian.
No, but mine
so
was going
nice.
to be mine was going to be very quick. I came away from the first podcast with a, I guess, reminder of the fact that this is a topic that like it affects everybody. I was talking to Annie after we recorded the last episode, and I was stunned to hear like some of the things that Casey had talked about, right? Because I've known Casey for close to a decade at this point. She has never once struck me as somebody who had any sort of like body image issues or self-esteem. Like Casey has always been like the coolest, most grounded, like got everything top to bottom under control and under wraps and everything. And it's just like it affects everybody.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. And I guess it was just a good reminder that, sometimes, where you're not sometimes, you're never alone, even when things feel pretty ugly inside and things like that, that there are lots of people that are going through the same thing. So that was my reflection, I guess.
Well, Brian said all the things I was going to say about myself, so I don't need to go now. I think the thing I reflected most on is I honestly feel like how far I have come in this conversation, just of like, I don't even, until I got those questions from you, Nicole, those aren't really things I've thought about a whole lot lately, which I think is great. Like that for me is something to celebrate, that it doesn't feel like it like takes up all of the space in my brain that it used to. So that's probably my biggest takeaway.
That alone is just awesome because I am a huge fan of headspace.
Yeah.
And freedom within headspace. And that's a really big deal when you can notice that. Awesome.
Well, I would say that for one of the few times in my life, I didn't spend much time thinking about what just happened.
Nice.
I logged off last time, and I thought that was pretty good. We're just gonna leave all of that there, and we're gonna move on. So I actually spent very little time overthinking everything, which I would say is a positive for me. So
that's a huge positive, Noah. Yeah, that's awesome.
So we'll leave it there.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't even know what to say to all of that. I mean, it's great. All of your responses are great. And I'm glad that there was some level of impact, I guess you could say, right? Brian, did you just raise your hand or?
I think he was clapping.
No, that was the applause. I was clapping for Noah's statement.
Oh, I forget that, Zoom has like emojis and things like that. Like that's all I would want to be doing is reacting to people the entire time. Cool. Annie, did you have any comments?
I don't.
Yeah.
I feel like even as a practitioner, wanted to bring this group in particular back again because I mean, Nicole, you've experienced as a practitioner where you've worked one-on-one or you've worked with groups where you're like, that made me really upset and tough. And this is a group where it was like, I love this kind of engagement and people who are willing to maybe change is a struggle, but willing to talk and willing to really express themselves and, no judgments and, have these discussions. So I think for me, it felt really, really good afterwards. And why, we talked immediately of like, let's do this again, because I think it has an impact and I think it really does matter and people should hear because we're all normal people. People for whatever reason think you and I are not. Right. We are normal people. We both experience things. And then we also have other people in our lives, friends, family, clients, whomever that experience these things and people need to hear about it.
I really loved the level of honesty and I guess, vulnerability, whether you were actually feeling comfortable or not, you really put on a good show. So, I mean, it's, just the comfort level of just sharing and being so open. But I think I say that word honesty because I think people struggle with sometimes being really honest with themselves, like about a lot of things, how they feel, and this is a big one, this is a big one to just like, it's okay. We can talk about this stuff. So, so very, very cool. Very, very cool, guys. So I had submitted 3 questions that, from that same list that I provided you guys. And, Annie and I were recording the other day and we're kind of talking about like how we wanted to structure this particular follow-up. And we thought that these 3 questions, whether we get to all of them, doesn't matter, were ones that might be kind of interest or interesting to actually, talk about and dive into. Some of it is past stuff, and sometimes it when we look at that too, when we look at these different angles, like Casey was saying, like, it's so neat to sort of see like how far you've come. But I mean, we're evolving humans. So we always hope like we're not the same as we were when we were 20, how we think about the world. So the first question was, how have you dealt with your body changes in the past? And I mean, you could take it right back to puberty if you want to.
Who wants to start? Brian, why don't you start and we'll just rotate like we did.
Let's see. How have I dealt with body changes in the past? And I was, I was kind of, I guess, considered a chubby kid when I was little. And I remember, like not any sort of, like abject bullying or anything like that, but just like, you're just aware, right? Like I remember having to buy blue jeans that were like, I think like the designation was like husky sized or whatever, where it was like
stupid names.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Where it was
ridiculous.
Like it's just one of those things, that like even as a 6-year-old or 7-year-old, you're thinking like, oh, that's weird. I have to like buy different pants, but like you don't really think much of it. And then, I had, I think the magical experience that a lot of, boys get. You hit puberty. I grew like 14 inches in the span of like 3 months and gained 4 pounds, so it was like, okay, so then everything was cool. And then like I kind of talked about on the last episode, you go through college and you're just in your early 20s and it doesn't matter what you eat. It doesn't matter if you exercise, everything just, evaporates when you eat it basically. And then one day that just stops. Right.
Yeah.
And, it's kind of a gradual addition of weight. And then you have that kind of eye-opening, like, shit, like these pants don't fit, that shirt doesn't fit, like what the hell happened here, So then you go the other direction, like we talked about. And for me, like with running, with changing the way I ate, it always, like, I always felt like I was kind of on the right path, but never actually getting, I had talked about like once I lose these last 5 pounds or these last 10 pounds and that sort of thing. And you never actually do that because I think on some level, like those last 5 pounds for me were it like I would have had to cut off a leg to lose that weight, right? Like there was just no more weight was going to come off. And, but that was kind of just my mental state at the time, was that everything I was doing was good, but could be better. And so over time, then, I started, met Annie, started working with Nicole, all these sorts of things. And my weight has kind of fluctuated a little bit. And I remember, like, plain as day, I remember one day Nicole talking about, like, you're doing everything right, and you have to be aware that you are going to turn 40 and things are going to change. And I was just kind of, like, I'm cocky enough in my own brain to be like, well, that happens to other people. That's not going to happen to me. And I swear to God, it was like a week after my 40th birthday. I was 10 pounds heavier. I had no idea why. And 3 years later, I have not been able to budge that number at all. And it's like, what the hell, So I mean, that's kind of, I guess, the ebb and flow of my, weight loss, weight gain, back and forth. And I guess, to be totally honest, since I gained that weight around when I turned 40, I'm not particularly happy with where my body's at. And we talked about last time, like, I think certain aspects of my running are better now than they were previously, especially when you talk about, the ultra distance and things like that. I'm nowhere near as fast as I used to be, like from a marathon standpoint and things like that. You could make the argument that I haven't put a ton of focus into that either. But even that, I haven't put a ton of focus into that because it doesn't feel good. It's hard to run fast in my current, body. And so because it is hard to run fast, you kind of, start to think like, all right, well, I'll focus more on ultra because I don't have to run as fast. I just have to run further. But like, it's easier to run further than it is to run faster, right? Like, I would much rather do a 50K than a really hard effort 5K right now. Yeah. Like a hard 5K sounds terrifying to me because it's just, I'm not used to that type of work anymore. So I mean, clearly it's there's a conflict in my own brain, right? Like, I'm happy with certain aspects, but I've also kind of made a concession about the fact that, like, it doesn't seem like this weight is ever going to go away without like a really big change that is probably going to swing me into the unhealthy side. And so I maybe just kind of need to start accepting that this is what the new reality is. But I don't particularly like doing that all the time. So
right, I have a comment of that, but Annie is chomping at the bit. So Annie,
I've got my hand up.
Nail it.
You also have to put your hand down, just so you know.
Two things. Number one, you would do an incredible job racing a 5K right now. You don't believe that. So some of this is your belief around
echo.
What speed, about what speed should be, what I should feel like, what I should look like, right? Because as an outsider, you would do a phenomenal job. No, will it be the best ever? No. But it certainly isn't going to be what you're perceiving in your brain. Second point, you kind of have this tendency, you've done this before, to skim over the period of time when you were, I was in college and all the things. And then I met Annie and Nicole. And there was this period in there where prior to meeting me, and this doesn't take a focus on body image, but what were you eating to ultimately change your body? Can you talk about that? Are you comfortable with that?
Are you talking about like how I started losing weight, or like kind of so like how I started losing
when
weight?
You met me, and what was the first thing I said to you when you told me what you were eating?
Well, I believe you said that I eat like a bird, or I eat like a woman, or something like that. Like, it was
a 12-year-old girl, Brian, a 12-year-old girl.
But it was, talk about the foods that you were consuming and the logic behind it in your brain.
Well, I mean, so I have always been fairly regimented is not the right word, but I generally have no problem eating the same stuff day after day after day. Right?
Regimented would be a fine word.
whatever. So I would, for breakfast every morning, I would have 2 eggs, a slice of deli turkey, and then like one of the little sandwich round thin, like the fake bread stuff. And like, I was eating that, the sandwich rounds thing, because like that was at a time when bread was bad, and right. And if I liked bread, but here's a way to eat less of it and still get that kind of bread sensation, but now you're not getting the bad parts of bread because there's less of it.
Interesting.
And then, I mean, basically for lunch and dinner, I was eating like a chicken breast and
Half a potato.
Occasionally half a potato, and that was about it.
And then a healthy choice ice cream bar.
Yes, and then a healthy choice ice cream bar from Costco at night. That was my little sweet treat, and I just ate that basically every day.
Right.
How are they allowed to call that ice cream? Sorry, completely side combo.
I think there's a different pod about food labels and things like that.
Seriously, a lot to say about that.
But I just want to bring that up because as we you talk about your history, we talk about food, and Casey, Brian had his food moments. You've had yours as well, with like whether you're talking to me or Nicole about what you've been eating, and then kind of having that shell shock of like, what do I have to eat this as well?
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, I think I have very similar to Brian, like leaving college, you have this moment of like, wow, how did I let myself get here? And then I don't care if it's a Google search. I don't care if it's talking to a friend who's lost weight. Like everything is cut the calories, less is more, like if eating 1,200 calories saw these results, what happens if you eat even less than that? And it happens, I think, at least for me in my 20s, it happened so quickly. The weight loss happened much faster than it probably ever will, as I am a year and a half from 40. Thanks, Brian. But I just remember like that time, it's really easy to be swayed by the opinions around you. So like I did CrossFit for 5 years. I love the workouts. Everything is super high protein, low carb, or you get the like only carbs that people eat are like donuts, it's like bad. It's just not great, nutrition advice. So you kind of follow along the path of the people you're around. And that really sways. I mean, I remember when I met with Nicole, I like talked about breakfast, eggs and bacon. And she's like, why do you eat bacon? I'm like, well, it's like protein. No, it's not. It's just fat, it tastes good, but she's like, you need to eat bread. And I think too, like Brian said, we grew up in a culture where carbs, any bread was bad. I remember my parents ate like the protein power plan, and my dad lost 30 pounds really quick. It's like, I have memories of that where bread was bad. So once we had like that label in my mind to even allow myself to eat bread, one, it felt like a treat, way better than those ice cream bars Brian was eating at night. But like it was like a treat, let alone like, man, my body really needs this.
Yeah.
So I think even though I have a degree in animal science, so like I have a ton of nutrition background and understanding of nutrition and nutrients, and but like applying that to myself, I needed an outside perspective to help me really think through that, because I think what you know and what you believe can like separate in that process.
Very much. And to that bacon comment, that wasn't about it being bad or anything. What I do find interesting though is that I often ask people why they think they're eating something, right? And it's usually because they think it's something that it isn't, or they think it's doing something that it really isn't, As long as you're eating it because it's yummy, that's great. But
I still love cooking because it's good,
but that's enough, right? So
Noah, what about you?
Well, if we're talking about bread, I mean, my bread of choice was sprouted bread for a long time because, if you're gonna eat bread, you have to eat the healthy version of it.
You have to, yeah.
But we don't keep much bread in the house anymore, and it's for no particular reason. Not that I think I'm afraid of it or anything, but going back to the question we started on of how have you dealt with body changes in the past? I went back and forth about, how to answer this question. My gut reaction was I haven't. Um, and and that feels very true, but I know it's not exactly true.
Right.
Whether it's helpful or unhelpful, I've definitely had to, deal with body changes. I was a larger kid, and I hated it. Both of my parents were overweight. In high school, my dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, and he refused to take insulin, so he lost weight. I should say he didn't want to take insulin. It's not like he was told to and he wouldn't. He didn't want to take insulin, so he wanted to control what he was eating and to control his body that way. And in the process, he wasn't massively overweight, but he lost, I don't know, 30 or 40 pounds, which was a fair amount for him. And that really, I don't know, it sort of showed me that, changing your body was a possibility. And over the next several years, I lost a lot of weight, and I would say very slowly. And I think all of the motivations and the reasons were good at first. Like I said last time, that body changing, becoming smaller, losing weight, it didn't actually solve anything. And it was tough to, like, things didn't go away. I think that was a challenge mentally, that my problems weren't solved. And just from a practical standpoint, dealing with the change of losing a drastic amount of weight it just takes your brain so long to catch up with the physical aspect of it. And there was so much mental stuff wrapped up in it as well that, I don't think I ever really saw the situation for what it was. When I was younger, I felt like, looking back, I think a lot of the physical side of me reflected the mental side. And so in order to change the physical side during college, I changed the mental side. But it didn't really get at any core issues. It just changed what I was eating, and not necessarily how I was thinking. And so then you fast forward about 10 years after that, and I started gaining the weight back. I mean, it takes your brain a long time to adjust to that. And there was a big part of me that felt like a failure, because so much of, I think, how I viewed my character was wrapped up in my body. And I don't think that's a foreign concept to any of us, especially since there's a lot of societal cues and expectations around that. There are a lot of assumptions about who you are and what type of person you are based on what your body looks like. And that's really hard, I think, to attempt to separate those things. So it feels like there's been constant movement with my body, which makes it, I think, hard to deal with. But at the same time, you're sort of constantly dealing with it. So I've been trying to focus over the last few years more on, who I am as a person, what my values are, what I enjoy doing, regardless of how I may think I look while doing it. But I almost feel like this question is sort of at the heart of a lot of things I struggle with. How do I deal with the body changing? Ultimately, I think my goal is to not care. I don't know if that's helpful either, but like, I just kind of want to not
Yeah.
care. I just kind of want to be.
That's right. Yeah.
Well, and what I'm hearing you say kind of early on was basically that concept of everywhere I go, there I am.
Yeah.
So
Unfortunately, yep.
Unfortunately, right? Like if, we try to do all of these external things or change our body and things like that, but everywhere I go, there I am. I still haven't dealt with the actual things that are going on. And like you said, just because your body changes doesn't mean those things also go away, even though we might have been told that society, if insurance tells us if we lose weight, everything will be better, nope, still
Right.
pain, so it's things like that we're told these things, or we have this expectation that these terrible things will go away if I can do X, Y, or Z. And yet again, everywhere I go, there I am. So that's kind of what I'm here, what I heard you ultimately saying, which I think is important for people to hear, because that is a concept that is a big struggle for people, is really believing that they really truly believe that they will change mentally or physiologically by simply changing their appearance. And that rarely happens.
I just wanted to make one point. You mentioned insurance, and we could do another podcast entirely on insurance.
Yes,
it's true.
Yes.
Which nobody wants. So, but one particular thing with insurance that I've been dealing with for the last couple of years is life insurance. And the health insurance stuff aside, I have been rejected over and over and over for life insurance. Simply because of some algorithms and some ratios of numbers that don't necessarily speak to my health
At all.
And
sorry, I have to, because we've had this conversation, and I can't fight for you enough around this, and everybody who's in this situation.
And it's tough because the reason for life insurance is to essentially help your family, to make sure you don't put your family in a tough situation. And essentially I can't do that. I can't help in that way. My wife has life insurance, so in case something happens to her, I'm okay, but it doesn't go the other direction, which makes me feel terrible, even though it's not my fault. But it's also this like direct connection between society and my body that I feel like I'm being told you're not worth insuring. Like it is your chances of dying are so much higher that we won't even try, even though they don't really know anything. So to me, this is a real life specific example of connecting assumptions to body numbers. Again, they don't know any of my other numbers. And it's just a lot of assumptions, just essentially based on my size. And that
weight
feels
is
terrible.
Not an indicator of health. I don't know how many times I have to say that to, not you, but to everyone, to the world, that weight is not an indicator of health. It just simply isn't. That's so sad. I'm so sorry that is a thing. It's terrible.
The good news is, through my employer, I found out that even though I'm not actually on their health insurance, I do get a little bit of automatic life insurance, but on top of that, I can pay to have up to a certain amount where they don't ask any questions.
Good.
So I just got onto that. It's not as much as I would like, but it's more than like 10,000 free, whatever they do.
Yeah. Yep.
So that's the small bit of good news.
Unreal. That's just sad.
Yeah, it is. It's totally
just
sad.
Because it's so many people who are experiencing. And again, I can't tell you how many people I get consulted with who are 300-400 pounds. Oh, they have diabetes, and they don't. They actually don't. You are literally just telling me. You're making this diagnosis up because of their weight, and their blood sugars are perfect, or well, you need to see them for cardiac stuff, and there's nothing wrong with them. And it's like, stop judging someone based on their weight. It's not an indicator of health. Weight is not an indicator of health. There are other factors involved. And can weight affect different things? Yes, it can. Does it affect everything for every person? No, not at all. There's so much more to the picture and to being a human being. But again, how does anyone feel, whether they're young and they're put, their BMI is put on their report card, to being told you can't have life insurance as an adult who's capable of making decisions and deciding these things for themselves and their body, being told you can't, because and how do we expect our health issues in this country to go away if we're not setting people up to feel good about themselves?
Mm-hmm.
How do we expect this stuff to fade? It's
Right.
not. It's only simply getting worse, and that's this.
Right.
It kills me.
Right.
The last thing I'll say about the health insurance or the life insurance is that I would even set health aside. I think everybody should have access to life insurance and health insurance, even quote unquote unhealthy people.
Mm-hmm.
So, everybody 100%. Deserves to have access.
Homeless people, everyone.
Absolutely.
Everyone.
Right. But remembering that this isn't really for the good of other people. This is really about business.
Correct.
For sure.
That's the sad part. Yeah. Well, that's a whole nother tangent. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I could just hop right onto my soapbox and we could go right into that, but I'm just gonna rein it in, pause there and go, let's go to the next question.
Well, so I just want to share just a tiny story in regards to what everybody else was also saying too. And because we're getting into the mental health thing, and I also wanted to comment a little bit on Brian's stuff too, but I don't know if I'll get to that.
Please do.
Well, but we were, the question is, how have we dealt with body changes in the past? And I remember, I think, and I've mentioned in the book too, how like my eating disorder wasn't ever really about body image. I mean, it truly was like just this mental health thing and this indirect way of trying to control something outside of myself to receive something I so desperately wasn't receiving. Like, what is so wrong with me? So I remember being a kid, and I think I was like in 8th grade, and I remember that I finally got out of this, like the size, whatever it was at the time when you were kids, right? You know how like they had so like I think I finally got out of like the size 12 kid, the kid pants or whatever.
To adult or teen.
And I finally got into a size 4 adult. And I remember being in 8th grade, so excited, told my grandma, like, I'm an adult now, or I'm, like, I remember being so excited that I was like growing and have you and the whole thing. And I remember probably that same year that my grandpa, I remember said, like, it's so, I find it so fascinating. And this is where, and I feel like it's a generational thing. So I'm really praying that this is just not the case anymore. But I think of like how parents talk to their kids and, what they say and stuff like that. And I remember my family being so focused on my body changing. Like everybody had a very inappropriate comment about anything on my body. Like that was something that everybody needed to discuss, which was so bizarre. And this isn't a big deal, but I remember like we would meet up with my grandparents, like every weekend we'd go to Hardee's. I loved Hardee's biscuits and their grape jelly, 100%. So, and I would always get like the big breakfast, just because it's what you got. And I liked all the things, and the eggs were really salty and, like all the, and I'm just super happy being a kid, you know what I mean? Eating my things. And I remember my grandfather would say this almost every single week: you're going to turn into a sumo wrestler if you keep eating that way. And he was like, just 100% like, that's what's going to happen to you. And I remember being naive enough as a kid going, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
And, I'm just like eating my biscuit. I don't know what that means, And then it dawned on me because I'm not equating. Like, I'm not equating like that if you do something, you turn into something different. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, and like, I never had an issue with my body's fine. And I think then, as you're getting older and now you're 13, and now, you're now you have like all the feelings, you know what I mean? and you don't even understand all your feelings, right? And you don't even understand why family is picking on you, and like you're still not good enough, and you're still not this, and you're still not doing that over here, and blah 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 blah. And then that's when I think my head just kind of lost it, with that whole thing. So how did we deal with body changes? Sometimes people lose it, especially when they're not getting support. That body change is just a very normal process, no matter what age you're in, because the beauty of our body is that it does adapt, because it's there to protect you because of any other life thing that might be coming your way or not, because there's a lot of things we can't control around our health. But the beauty is that we have this amazing object that helps expand and contract at the appropriate times to help you continue functioning and living and moving forward. Anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that because of the whole, mental health piece, All right. So again, because I can definitely, I don't know, Brian, I'm really thinking about you here around this. Was there a time when you felt great in your body?
I like her eye roll too.
Right.
Well, I think, for me, I think it's pretty evident that in the moment, I don't think I've ever felt, like that I was good in my body. But the fascinating thing is that you look back to, like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, like, how was I not happy with that? Right. Like that was exactly what I was looking for. And, and I know Noah kind of hit on this, and I think we talked about it a little bit last time too, where it's like, it is starting to become more and more evident that how I feel about my body is just a microcosm of how I feel kind of in general.
Yeah.
And the more out of control I feel just with life, whether it's, shit's happening at work or whatever, it all just kind of cascades, right? And now, like in this current moment, I'm still not particularly thrilled with things, but I'm also not, like I'm not panicking about it, and I'm not, you know what I mean? Like I'm not sitting here every night thinking, God, how am I going to lose this weight and blah blah blah. Like it's just kind of a little bit of acceptance, maybe as much acceptance as you'll ever get out of me personally, of where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, I can honestly say that no, there has never been a time in the moment where I felt happy with my body and where it's at.
I can probably validate that a little bit. The one moment I think where I think you felt good about things, but then you also didn't, is when in 2015 or 16 in Sedona, and there's a picture of you running down the and you loved how you looked, but you also were able to identify you were too thin. So now we flipped, right? Where you were like,
I can identify I was too thin because I had you and Nicole in my life telling me on a weekly or daily basis, depending on who I was talking to, that I was too thin.
That you're supposed to say you're too thin.
Honestly, like I don't ever recall feeling like, ugh, that was unhealthy. I very clearly recall being told that it was unhealthy. And just kind of like, well, you two know what you're talking about, and I don't, not in this arena anyway. So if they say it's unhealthy or I'm too thin, then I must be too thin. I didn't actually ever think I was, though.
You just blindly follow.
Well, when you're paying somebody to tell you things, right? Like,
but to prove a point though, of like,
yeah,
people really are never okay. Ultimately, right? It doesn't matter which way we're swinging it. We're never okay.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I wanted to kind of ask. Like, did you think like you were right where you wanted to be, and that was, do you know what I mean? Or was it still not enough for you?
No, it was not enough. It was not enough. But I do recall at times feeling like I was getting close.
Yeah.
you're getting close, and then it's like, oh, and then it's the holidays, and you're like, I had a little too many Christmas cookies, and so like we got to get back to it, and that sort of thing. But no, I was never like, if I can just stay here, this is going to be great.
Right.
There was never anything like that.
Well, and I guess, the second half of that question, and again, wanting to be mindful about everybody else's stories, but Brian, you're just like, we're coming at you.
This is really great, right? Like I get to have both Nicole and my wife on to gang up on me. I love it. Not sure why the hell I agreed to this.
I'm not sure you did.
Oh
That's
gosh.
also fair.
Well, and I'm not really, it's just, it's a thought, the second half of this question was, what was happening in your life to make it so or not make it so, right? So, like, can you, because I think here, the thing is like so many people to be like, this was a great time. Like, I felt really good. I felt like I looked really good. And it's like, okay, well, what was happening in your life? I had less stress. I had more freedom. I had, so it's really like all of these other things that you feel you don't have now meant it must be because my body was different. Do you know what I mean? That I was so much happier. It's like, I want people to sort of see that connection, but that's not always the case.
No, definitely not.
But for you, it wasn't about that. Yeah.
No, I mean, for me, I think my body generally, at least for the last, decade or so, has really been tied into athletic performance and running performance. And if I think about when was I happiest with my body, it goes into, 2017, 2018, when I was probably kind of at my peak speed as far as what I really always cared about was running a fast marathon. And that's when I was kind of at my peak as far as athletic ability was in that time. And if you look back at that time, there was a lot of other stuff happening that felt like I was kind of on the right trajectory in life.
Yeah.
Right. Like, not to get too far into things, but like, we got custody of Joss, and she moved in with us. So I didn't have to worry about what was happening when my daughter was with her mom, and like got out of a very bad work situation. And like Annie did the Ice Age Trail, and I made a bunch of new friends and wrote a book, and like, all this stuff, like all of this great stuff was happening. And it was also like my own running was going well. I was happy-ish with how my body looked. So yeah, like everything was kind of slotting into place.
Yeah.
And you fast forward to today, where things in most arenas of my life are leaps and bounds better than they were back then. And that's why I think there is a little bit more of an acceptance of my body today, because it's just like everything is going well-ish. So why spend a bunch of time worrying about this all the time?
Love it.
I'm going to spend a little bit of time worrying about it once in a while.
Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be Brian, right?
Exactly. That's exactly right.
That would be abnormal,
right.
and then we would be very nervous. Yes.
Exactly.
Got to make sure we're anxious about something.
Yes.
Yes.
For some of us, that anxiousness is a superpower, Annie. Like it predicts things that never happen. So
it is a superpower.
I relate a lot to what Brian was just saying, and Nicole, your point. When I think about like a time you feel great, I think often that when I'm training for something that I'm looking forward to, that's when I feel really great. And in general, I do. However, I think your point that was just made about what else is going on in your life. At my 4 years ago, I made a big job change that has given me a whole lot more freedom and happiness and good nights of sleep, less need to control. Where I think work when things are out of control, this was something I could control, and brought me joy, so that, I would overdo it maybe a little bit, where now I feel really, good in training for the things I enjoy doing. So, and like Brian, because everything else feels good, I don't think I spend as much time even thinking about it as I did previously.
Yeah.
Even though Casey, I mean, as an outsider, you look the same, you know what I mean? It's not like,
Yeah.
oh, you've had this big body change and all your life is going
Yeah.
really well.
Yeah.
And oh, now I don't have these thoughts anymore.
Yeah. I mean,
You're
I
the same
think there's,
person.
yeah, I think there's
Exactly.
some really basic things here. Like a good night of sleep changes how you feel about yourself. You know, when you can sleep for 8 solid hours and do that routinely, I can tell you, for me, like when I start to be a hard person to be around, what's the first thing I'm like, how many hours have I slept this week? 6 hours. You know, I need to
Yeah.
sleep like just good, nutritious, regular meals. You know, it's just like some of that basic stuff that when that um gets out of whack, the whole situation feels like it becomes more out of control for me.
That's
That
a
makes
really
a
good
ton of
point.
sense. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. Noah?
So looking at this question, I don't think there's ever been a time when I have felt great about my body. But I specifically, is there a time where I felt great in it? Um, I would say that at the probably towards the beginning of my heavy running, uh, there was a I was in, I think I was in Door County visiting my mom, and I remember her being there. Maybe she was down here. Doesn't matter. So I remember being with her in a parking lot, and I remember just bouncing through that parking lot, like running around, jumping up and like in my 20s, like not a 12-year-old. And I remember just bouncing through this parking lot, I think, as we were walking to the car. And that still sticks out in my head, of when I felt great in my body. Just wanted to move. I just like there was just sort of a joyous movement about it. And I think about that maybe not a lot, but it's a fairly regular thought. And just how good that felt in those moments. And then to the second part, why, what else was going on at that time. Yeah, I think, like others said, I was younger, there was less going on in my life, there were fewer responsibilities.
Yeah.
I wasn't in a relationship. I could sort of do whatever I want. I had a quote unquote real job and was making money and could afford to do things. And there was sort of a freeness. But I look back and I think about what it was that I really enjoyed about that moment, and what did make it feel great. And that has kind of formed my current thoughts about what I want. Because in that moment, I don't think I felt great in my body because I was quote unquote skinny. I don't think I felt great because other people thought I looked great. To me, I think it was truly having a free feeling, having just the movement, being able to move my body however I wanted in that moment. That really has kind of turned into a goal now. I think it's been a much more helpful goal because it doesn't require my body to look a certain way, doesn't require my body to be able to achieve certain things. There's almost no benchmark except for how I feel in my body. So it's a very fond memory, something I wish I had bounced through more parking lots. But that felt great. I would love to feel that again.
That's awesome. Well, the good part is that you are feeling it. Like you think back and you legit feel that, what that feels like. And that's awesome. And now we got to bounce here. For Annie, are there any final thoughts around anything that we've discussed?
I'll be curious how people walk away from this one.
Yeah, me too.
I think this has been very interesting experience for me, just to hear other people's experiences. You know, even those of us that maybe have reached out to others for help and have seen therapists or dietitians, or, you know, you tend to just talk about yourself, and you tend to just hear I guess analysis or reactions to you. So it's nice hearing some other perspectives, some shared experiences. Interesting to hear how things have been different. Honestly, I'm hoping to walk away and, at least for a week, not think about this. I think it will be something good to reflect upon in the future, but it's just been a very positive experience for me.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that a little bit, I mean, I kind of said at the outset, you know, this feeling that you're not alone, right? And Noah just really hit that this is stuff that everybody is going through, feels or has felt in the past, or has some experience with it. You know, so continuing to shine that light and to spread that message of, you know, you're not alone. It's maybe not normal to feel this way, but it's not uncommon to feel this way, and that there is a path through it and beyond it, you know, to a place where things feel better. And it seems like, and I don't know if this was on purpose, it seems like you've got kind of a tier system with the three of us that you chose. You've got Noah, who it seems like anyway is maybe struggling a little bit more than I am, and you've got Casey, who's struggling a little bit less than I am. So you've kind of got like three different people at three different points, right? To show that, like, it can feel bad, and it can get better, and it can continue to get better. You know, so just encouraging more dialogue like this, and regardless of the topic, right? I mean, because we're all dealing with all kinds of weird shit in our society and in our friend groups and in your families. Like, it's nonstop assault on your own mental well-being. But everybody's feeling it. And if we just can normalize a little bit more of saying, I'm not okay, or I wasn't okay and things got better, or whatever the case may be, that's how you can start to bring people together and maybe start to tamp down some of the mental struggles that we as a society are feeling on every day.
Brian for president.
Yeah, I want my yard sign.
I've got some in the garage. They're ready to go. Don't worry.
I honestly, Annie, your comment of weight is not an indicator of health is something that I just wish you could, like, Brian, there's your platform for your campaign. Cause I mean, to me, that's just at the root of all of this is it's become about a number, not actual health. So I think the other thing that I've heard everyone talk about is, like, find those things that bring you joy and just do more of that. You know, don't not necessarily make this about if I do this activity or if I eat like this, is this going to get me to this magical number that, to Brian's point, it actually doesn't exist. We can feel like we're getting closer to it. We can feel like I'm just a couple pounds away. I'm just fill in the blank away, which is not true. Ever. Our brains are just playing games on that. But, like, what actually at the end of the day is going to bring you joy and happiness in life? Because it's not a number on a scale.
Well, this has been real, guys. This has been real juicy. I love it. Thanks again for participating, everybody. You guys are just lovely humans. And thank you for saying yes. Gosh, so much love. Thank you. Yes, thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. And again, you know, we'd love to hear everybody's comments, you know, feedback, shared stories, you know, let us know about this. So anyway, hoping that this, you know, sparks some thoughts or conversations amongst our listeners, and some better supportive feel good thoughts towards themselves too. So anyway, thanks everybody.
Bye everyone.
Bye.
Have questions you want to hear discussed on the show? Find us on Facebook or visit between2pastries.com and drop us a line. Want to support the show? Find us on Patreon for exclusive content. If you love the show, find us on iTunes or your favorite podcast platform. Hit the subscribe button and leave us a review.